Hey everybody, welcome back to HoloNet Marauders. We have an interview today and we're joined by a familiar face. Probably know him from All New Nerds. Levi, how are you doing, Levi?
I'm doing very well, and it's so funny to me that I'm the one being interviewed now. We've come so far in this circle that I'm being
Yeah,
interviewed now. Sure,
this is the biggest celebrity I've interviewed yet.
yeah, why
So
not?
Levi, if you follow him on social media or follow the All New Nerds, I think they've posted a little about it, was lucky enough to be in Ahsoka as a night trooper, as one of the zombie stormtrooper guys, which
It's
is really
true.
cool. Yeah.
It's public now. I can finally talk about it and explain. And we haven't, for all the All New Nerds fans who watch this, don't worry. We are working on going back to the channel, but imagine me, for the last year, because I'm sure you guys have followed, at least to some extent. Like I was talking about Star Wars during that time. Like this was filmed a long time ago, and that whole time I had to just pretend not to. All of the speculation about Ahsoka, all of that stuff, I was just couldn't. I had to, Andrew Garfield it of like I'm sure this might happen. I really it really tamped our coverage of stuff over the last year because it was kind of difficult because the amount of theories and people would ask like, oh, do you think this is going to happen? And the best one I want to shout out Brent. This is just a really funny story because or here rather, in LA, and we were hanging out and we went and saw The Mandalorian at Pally Fest. It was this fun celebration, but at that point we had shot Ahsoka a long time ago, and he had done a live stream where he was unboxing as he does Hot Toy, and it was a Hot Toy of
Yeah.
Ahsoka, and we were all sitting together, and I was saying how I really didn't think this head sculpt looked like Rosario, and he just looks at me and goes, "Oh, what? Like, have you met Rosario?" And I had to sit there and go, "No." And it's like one of the funniest things. If you guys go back and find it, it's from April of this year. The way that I just like shut down, I'm like, no, like because I knew he knew because if you watch my social media, like it was a whole thing, but it was so funny, and you can go back and see so many moments like that where someone would be like, "Well, what do you know?" And I'm like, "Nothing." I just have to be like, "No, I don't know anything." Like, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You had to really act to hide that you were acting as an extra in Star Wars. So that's pretty wild. But
Well, because for me, like as a huge fan, like a lot of there's people who are there who just are doing a job, and then there's people there who love this stuff, and they can see like a little prop on set and be like, "Oh my god, that means this," and then connect it to a million other things, and so you can pick up on a lot. And yeah, you just have to keep all the information in.
oh yeah. So how first question is really like how did it all go down? Like what was the process of getting in there and all that?
I mean, yeah, I've told this story personally to a few people, and it really just comes down to uh, I think not quite luck, but I mean, I am lucky. I just happen to have the number one thing is I happen to be a fairly good height and build to fit into armor. That's
Sure.
like the number one thing is I just happen to have the right body shape, and that is something that not a lot of people can control or like plan for or like be like I can go into this because I have the right body type. Like it's something that isn't that was just absolutely luck of the draw. But in terms of getting it, I don't know if I can say too much. I mean, I can say that I just have really good friends, and I had friends who were sort of privy to the casting process. And it's not like someone directly at Lucasfilm or whatever gives you a call and says, "Hey, do you want to come be in this thing?" And that's not how it is. But they do have sort of when they need people in a quick amount of time for certain body types, they just sort of send out if you know where to look like these casting calls, and
Yeah.
someone made me aware of one and said, "Hey, like I think you should apply to this. I think maybe you would get it because you have that body type." And I replied really quickly. It's just one of those things. Like I got back to them really fast, and within 4 hours, 5 hours, they said, "Hey, we need you. Like, can you come in?" And then in the next 12 hours, the next day, I was on a plane to LA because I didn't tell them that I wasn't in Los Angeles. I didn't tell them like I'm just like a crazy Star Wars fan who this my friend who's also into it sent me this thing that potentially you could do this. I'm telling you, it was just complete uh like serendipity that this stuff lined up. And once again, the friends thing, I was lucky enough to have someone, Brent, Age of Grogu, who let me stay with him here while this all happened, and just good friends. That's how it happened. Just really
Hey,
really
that's
good friends, and
life. You gotta have good
I
friends.
feel incredibly fortunate. Um, for the friends I made sense too on like working on it. And it's one of those things that a lot of things just had to line up. There's no like magic bullet for this, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I feel incredibly lucky, and every day I wake up, I'm like, man, that is insane that happened, and that these posters, like I can look at these posters and be like, oh my god, like I
Yeah.
was in that episode, and it only happened because
You were
of
in
the
that
friends I
helmet.
made. I know.
No, I mean it's wild, and it really, I kept, saying to you once the news came out that you were in it, I was like, it couldn't happen to a better person, and like a bigger Star Wars fan, and like a truly good person. So
I appreciate that.
everyone at HoloNet has been happy for you, and it's been fun to see all this. But yeah, so what you're saying is I'm too short to be a stormtrooper, literally,
Well,
probably.
actually, it's more. I mean, you maybe, but I am too tall. And one of my best stories is when there's the scene in episode 6 when Thrawn walks down the aisle of all of the night troopers. And as many people pointed out online, a lot of those are not real, but there are 40 of those, 40 people there that are very real. And if you ever run into me and you have that frame, I have that frame on my phone saved because I'm like, it's the coolest thing ever. But I can point out to you, there's something. Yeah, you can
I got
see.
these off your
Yeah, you
Instagram.
can see on the left side there. Uh, there's one that's taller and sort of off from everyone, and that one's me. That's the first one that's real. The two in the foreground there are digital, and then the first one that's real is me. And in that shot, while we were framing it, Dave Filoni comes up to me and says like, "Hey man, like you're blocking like throw your two," because Lars is a tall guy. Lars is like 6'4", but I'm 6'2" and some change, and I was like ruining the framing, like Thrawn walking down, and they're like, "You're too tall." I'm like, they had to move me, and it was crazy. So I actually got told that I was too tall to be a stormtrooper by Dave Filoni, but
Wow,
sort of in a joking way.
that's pretty impressive. But
I know. I was so embarrassed because I took off the helmet. I didn't know who was like tapping me on my side, and then it was Dave, and I just went completely. I completely shut down. I had no. I totally fumbled through that whole conversation. I was
I would have
fortunate
been
enough
so
to talk.
nervous.
Talk to some really cool people during that time, and that was one of those. That was one of those moments, one of those conversations where my mind was just going a million miles a minute, and I didn't know how to slow down and say like, "Oh my god, you changed my life," or something like that, because he's trying to like joke with me about like like Luke Skywalker, like, hey, you know how he said that? I'm like, yeah, you're doing this Star Wars bit with me. I know, I know. And I was just freaking out. And all the while, Lars Mikkelsen is there in full Thrawn makeup, and I'm like, what is happening? I'm like, what is going on right now? Like, it was nonsense, complete
That is
nonsense.
crazy. So Leia told Luke that he was too short. Dave Filoni told you were too tall.
I
So
was
that's
too tall.
perfect.
Yes. Yeah. It is. Yeah.
So when you got the opportunity to get through all this, what like information did they give you off the bat? Were they like, "Oh, are you going to be a stormtrooper," or was it very vague and all that?
No, and actually, you're pulling the video, the stuff from my Instagram. I know you've seen the video. I actually thought at first I was going to be a clone, because I had sort of discerned it was all code names, right? It's all code names, as you guys have seen the behind the scenes, in the gallery. It's Huckleberry, or Buccaneer for Book of Boba, Mando, that kind of stuff, and likewise, I think. I mean, I know I don't think I'm saying too much because I think it is public now. I mean, they've posted a million things about this, but the code name for Ahsoka was Stormcrow, in a reference to Gandalf.
Hmm.
And it was one of those things that I just kind of, because I'm such a mega fan, I was able to intuit the the code names. So it's all. I don't think I don't think I'm going to say too much about that process, but I'll say it's all codes. It's all codes. They didn't say anything directly of this is Star Wars or you're going to be X, Y, and Z. I didn't know what I was going to be until I did. I came into the place where they have the costumes and you do a fitting with some
Yeah.
costumers, which I do want to take a moment to. I did have the wonderful and lovely ability to talk and work with Shauna Tripsick, who
Oh yeah.
unfortunately passed away very recently, and she was just such a kind soul and wonderful person to me, because I was not on the full production. I'm fortunate enough to be in 3 episodes of the show, but I was not on for a lot of those other guys and those stunt guys and the stunt Instagram. They did a lot more work than me. They were there for a lot longer. I'm not going to say like specific days, but I came in towards the end and still did a good amount of work, but nowhere near as much. But Shauna You know, she took me under her wing kind of thing. Not like, I'm not gonna say I was her friend, but she cared about me because I was always in someone else's armor, and so I would stretch it because I'm sort of tall, and so she would always be like, "Man, like, what are you doing to me?" And I was her problem child, and we would always talk. And there's this, you know, when we would line up, and I don't know, but she was just such a wonderful woman, and her legacy lives on in her work. And you know, she designed the armor with Dave and Doug Chang. Sort of they worked together to design it, and she was telling me about that. And I don't know, I know that the links are all out there for the GoFundMe. I'm not sure if that's closed yet, but if you can donate to her family, because she was just such a wonderful human being. But you know, she you know, in that process, you see them behind the scenes stuff, the costumer. That is when I figured out what I was. When they took out this bin and I saw the helmet, I was like, "Ooh, that's something new,"
Oh
and
my god.
I really started freaking out. And you can't express enough how amazing it was to be in that place where you have all these costumes, but then to also see they have all of the visual dictionaries, you know, there lined up for reference photos. They have all of the art books. They have all of these action figures to like see all for reference, because that's part of their job, and they love Star Wars just as much as we do. So you know, they have the, you know, while I was thumbing through the TFA visual dictionary while I was sitting there waiting, because all that stuff is just there because they love it just as much as we do.
It's like waiting to
Um,
get your hair cut or something. You're flipping through the magazines. You're
I
flipping
know
through the visual
exactly,
dictionary.
but it was the Tross visual, or the TFA visual dictionary. Oh, they were all there, and I don't know. So I don't know the costume. I know I kind of got off track there talking about Shauna, but that process, you know, that phase of it, when you watch the behind the scenes, her department, that is the first thing you uh, usually interact with. Just any, you know, any actor does, from the main cast. The first thing you're doing is hair and makeup and costuming, and that's where I figured it out. Of yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea going in. Like as you said in the video, I say the wrong thing,
Yeah.
um, but
No, I
pretty
mean
quickly figured
it's
it out.
really incredible. You know, me and Jamie and a lot of us are big Star Wars cosplayers, and we do stuff with, you know, 501st Rebel Legion, but like those things have to be screen accurate. But you were literally wearing something that was worn on the screen. So like I'm fascinated in all the costume stuff. And
It's so
you know,
funny too, because and these are just little anecdotes. I'm not going to give specific names, but one of the people there was talking about how they have connections. You know, they talk to the 501st all the time because the 501st are sometimes involved in, you know, in the productions, like in Mandalorian season one,
yeah.
where they brought all the 501st guys in. But they were talking. There was just this funny anecdote where this individual was getting sort of not heated, but into a very spirited discussion about the differences between the different TIE fighter pilots and what the 501st what the 501st says it is and what they say it is, and like the screen accurate. Like it was so funny. It was like the most niche.
It's wild.
But what witnessing someone like care about it this much, and I was like engaging in the conversation, like yeah, I know about like the tie pilots with the lines and New Hope versus, you know, the different eyes, and you know, the one with like the half Imperial cog and in the New Hope, and it's like all that stuff that they care about it. What's screen accurate, what can be used, and where the tubes go, and it was just great. It was they a lot of people there care about that stuff just as much as we as fans do, and that was really
Oh
heartening.
yeah.
It was a heartening experience.
It's cool to hear that like they go over the visual dictionaries, like literally Jamie's finishing a costume upstairs, going through the visual dictionary. You know, we'll be looking at action figures, and just that they're doing that in the big leagues for the shows, for the movies. It's just wild. And I'm glad you brought up Shauna, because you know that was an absolute tragedy of what happened. The news when we found that out, I was just devastated. It was just one of those ones that hits you. You know, being so into the costumes and knowing who that is, and watching the documentaries on Disney Plus, like I always loved her parts. It was a real loss for the Star Wars galaxy when she passed away. So I'm glad you had those memories with her. That's like really awesome, and I love hearing about that. So transitioning from there, you kind of talked about like what your first days on set might have been like, but what was like your first day? You walk in, how did that go? Were there like a lot of nerves going around or what?
Oh, I mean, the first couple hours, I'll say, was honestly kind of terrible. Not because of anything anyone was doing, but just because of what was happening to like myself. I was having like a nervous breakdown. I
Oh God.
mean, I will. I don't know how much I can say with. Basically, it was yeah. I won't say how it was done, but it was an early shoot, and we were shooting. Rather, they were shooting the stuff on Perea. So the big open field, that kind of thing. So you can imagine it's a big set, it's a large environment, and like walking into that at 5:30 a.m. and you're like, oh my god, this is my first day doing something ever like this, and then you see Dave Filoni, you see Carrie Beck, you see Jon Favreau, you see Rosario, you see Natasha, you see Amon, and your mind, for me, was just literally breaking down. Like I was having a panic attack. I'm actually in the shots of the night troopers coming out of the dropships when they land on Peridea. I am in that, but I am not in when they run away because I was offset, like panicking. And I came back after dealing with that, and then from then on, it was like the best experience of my entire life. Once I got that out of my system,
Yeah.
I was so fortunate to have people there who were incredibly kind to me. The staff was so understanding and welcoming, and that particular crew, who works with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, are just like the nicest people ever. And I've been lucky enough to talk with a lot of them and become friends with some of them. And I'm lucky enough to say like that they are kind, and they made me not have to worry or freak out, and they were completely understanding of what was happening. Because on top of the fact that the nerves from being a Star Wars fan, you're also in armor in 100-degree weather, in like the early mornings when you have no hours of sleep. Like it's not easy for the human body to deal with all this extra weight on you in this extreme heat. So it's something that everyone goes through to a certain extent. But yeah, after like afternoon, after lunch on that first day, I was over it, and I was just so excited to be there and just take it all in. But it is cool as a fan. The first things that I noticed was the people from like the BTS, like recognizing faces. That was the coolest thing. Being like, oh my god, that's Richard Bluff. That's the guy with the glasses who talks about the volume. Or that's Carrie Beck, the producer of Rebels, and et cetera and et cetera. And she's sitting here next to Dave, or Kim, the first AD, the person who in every documentary, the way they frame it, she's always the one saying, it's a rap at the end and doing the rap thing, or in the beginning. Like the one in my mind is when there's this great bit of her from the Mandalorian season 2 documentary where she's trying to like route up the crowd and explain to them what Gamorreans are. She's like, you guys know about Gamorreans? They're like these big people, and they're gonna be fighting in this pit. And like I'm like, that's her. I'm like, oh my god, that's great. So that was my first instinct, was just to pick up faces, and then after that it was panic, and then after the panic I was back, and then I was just taking it all in. And when I tell you that I had a smile on my face for the entire time, I am not kidding. I was just ear to ear smiling no matter what was going on the whole time, no matter how hot it was, no matter what. I just couldn't believe it.
I think it's safe to say a lot of us probably would have been in that same boat of like having a freak out, needing a moment, and then getting right back out there. But it's wild because like someone who knows like everything about Star Wars, almost like nearly every inch of Star Wars lore, all the people behind the scenes, there's probably a lot of people that just like aren't into Star Wars, I imagine, and they're just like, oh, maybe they're not as overwhelmed. But it's pretty interesting, right?
Well, certainly, when you have, yeah, I mean, the answer is just yes. Like when there's people working on stuff that are doing it because it's it's employment. I'd say, and then that's okay. Not everyone who works on these things need to know the difference between all these different things, or when they call, there's a T6 coming over, they don't need to know what a T6 shuttle is. They don't need to know that.
Right.
I'd say the crew, and from my experience, all had a general passion and knowledge and love for at least what they were working on. But when you're, a stunt guy in 150 degrees, your first thought on your mind isn't, oh my god, Ezra has a beard. Like no, you're thinking like, how am I going to do my job and survive the day? And I don't begrudge anyone for not for not knowing certain specific lore stuff. Like that's that is not, and no one's going to be shunned or shamed for that, or nor should they be on the set. Like they are doing their jobs. They did their jobs wonderfully. All those guys I talked to were super nice. And some of them do happen to love Star Wars, but if they don't, like that, that's okay. Like,
of course,
they're doing their job, and they're incredibly wonderful and kind. And not everyone involved needs to know everything. Like that.
Honestly,
that is
probably not everyone, even close, probably knows everything. Probably have a select few super fans like you in there, but
yeah, like that is it's an unrealistic expectation to put onto people. And
of course,
there are so many other things to be thinking about when. Especially like, I brought up Stunts. Stunts is a great example because they are always moving, always literally getting thrown around, getting hurt. I mean, it's yeah, you gotta be focusing on that, and I think that's a good department to bring up because it is just so physical and so like taxing on your body. That is what you're thinking about. And you're thinking about how am I going to execute these moves right to look, to look good on camera and to work with the actor and the stunt double, and that's that's the focus, and that's as it should be, and
As it should
safety
be.
and all that
Not
stuff.
Ezra's beard.
Yeah, not Ezra's beard,
Merlin's beard.
which I was standing off to the side going, oh my god, Ezra has a beard.
And very
And he looked
blue
very good.
eyes.
And very blue eyes. Very blue eyes. Those are contacts. Those were very real.
I can't help but notice you keep bringing up like the temperature. Clearly, that was a big thing.
Yeah.
But talk about like the set. Like, were you outside? Was it outside? I know they used the volume. Like, talk a little bit about that.
That's where I don't know if I can.
Okay.
I want to say too much, but I will say that like for the prettiest stuff, it was not inside. It was outside, and yeah, it gets hot in Southern California, especially in this, in when it was being shot in, in summertime. Yeah, I guess that's not a secret. It's Celebration. They came out, and that's the craziest thing. As I put in my post, like being at that panel in May, and then to work on it like that summer, it's like what? Like I watched them reveal this show. But so yeah, it gets hot. But like I said, they're very kind. So there's always water. People are trying to give you water and food, and that was never a concern. Like that had happened in the past, just in general. I mean, that's when they were shooting stuff in Tunisia in '78 and '79, or I guess it would have been like '81 and '82 for Return of the Jedi. That happened all the time.
Yeah.
But so it's always been a concern when people are wearing huge costumes and big makeup and all that stuff. Like that is a concern. But they're very aware of it. They're trying to take care of it. And so that was, like I said, after that first like bit of panic, that was not something that was on my mind. But I will say, working on the volume, which I fortunately got to do, and being in a studio like that, a lot nicer because it's cool. they got the thing is air conditioned. That is a much more pleasant,
Must be nice.
environment.
Yeah. So I don't know what you can share and what you can't share, but do you have like a main highlight or two from being on set, like with one of these big characters in the show or anything? I don't know what you're allowed to share, but
yeah, I think in terms of the scenes that are the show is out, so I can't spoil anything with the scenes that I was in. And that is a really good question. I think probably the one that I am most excited about was the scene with, it's in 6, but after we have sort of come off the gangway out of the Chimera, and I'm just in this frame with all of the villains, and I was really there. That wasn't a composited shot or anything. It was, yes, that one. and so witnessing that, like being in that scene, just seeing, which unfortunately also means I do have to bring up, like during this process, I did fortunately get to meet and interact with Ray Stevenson, and he was the nicest, kindest, gentlest soul, gentle giant. And when his death, really another tragedy that broke my heart, because he was so kind. So like what happened there, I think this is a fine BTS anecdote to share, is I talked with Ivana quite a bit, relative to how much I was there, and she was walking by at one point, and we were sort of just standing off set, getting ready to do that walk. Because even though in the show, I don't know how much but people have observed that some of those troopers are CGI, and there is stuff that is CGI that we did shoot, and they opted to use CGI instead. And that's a question for Richard Bluff and VFX team. And I don't have the answers there, and I'm not going to make any assertions about what they should have done. But there were scenes that I was physically in that I got replaced. But we were sort of standing on that bridge, that gangway. That was a real bridge, and Ivana walked by with like this platter of like cheese and pita, like bread, and like she's like, "Oh, you want some snack?" Or like that started because I was walking this way, and I was just sort of like, I don't know, we're just shooting the crap. We're just having fun, right? Everyone's having so much fun. You can see in her behind the scenes videos
in costume, yeah,
in costume. And I'm like, okay, like I'm talking with Ivana, and we sort of make a joke about like, I don't know, I would love some food or something like that. I don't know, just getting some snacks, and I didn't expect her to come back with this tray, and so she hands me this like tray of pita bread, like this whole like platter. And I'm standing there like in costume. I'm like, I have my helmet in one hand and like my blaster. I'm like, I can't eat this bread. And she walks away. And I'm like, Ivana, I'm like, I can't do this. But she walked away. And Ray is coming up. And I say, Ray, like, can you please give this back to your apprentice? Like, I can't deal with it. I said, apprentice. And he looks at me and he looks me up and down. And he's like, oh, she's just trying to fatten you up. Even though I'm like the 6'2" guy, and because he's this massive man, you know, you've seen the show, like he's huge.
Yeah.
And he like looks me up and he's like, she's just trying to fatten you up, but you know, she's just. He said something else, and it was just so funny. And then but he takes it back. So then Ray Stevenson in full Balin Skull gears, like he takes this pita hummus thing from me. I'm like, oh man, like what's going on? And he goes back over to her where like the main cast is sitting, and then she gets up. Ivana gets up and storms out, and she goes, you're not respecting my snacks. I'm walking off this set. She says, I'm out of here. She says, Levi, I'm out. I quit. And she storms out. Like there's this whole like fake storm out of like the show's canceled. Like he won't take my pita bread. And I was like, that's like one of my favorite.
That's unbelievable.
That's one of my favorite moments from. I was just standing in the right place at the right time, and I like it was this whole thing, and it was hilarious. And they were such a duo, and yeah, Ray was, you know, joking and laughing, and it was just such a positive vibe.
Yeah.
But then to come back, you know, obviously she didn't actually quit the show, guys. But then to come back and then do that scene where, you know, we're walking in with Enoch and Thrawn, and you have everyone standing there. It was great. Another good anecdote like that, I think, that people will appreciate is Diana Lee Inosanto, who plays Morgan Elsbeth. I got to talk to her a bit, and one of those stories is trying to figure out how much I can say. We did that scene in episode 8 where she says, "Go now, let none pass." You know, you guys are familiar. Like she sends us out. She sends the volunteers out as Thrawn and Enoch walk in, all that stuff. And I'll just say that scene. She said those lines a lot. She had to say those lines quite a few times. And so every time he would reset, I'd be like, Diana, like maybe like consider like letting some pass this time. And it would always like mess her up. But then by the end, I was like, just let them pass. Like, please, just like let them pass. Like we gotta be done with this. And we would have this back and forth about this line because there was a lot of takes of it, and I don't know. Everyone had such a fun vibe, and you know, I hate to again say. Actually, here's my favorite moment is in that scene because there's the witch. So the witches of Dathomir, they all have the names of the Greek fates. I can like Agrippa. Yeah, you know them. They're very cool. The Dathomir.
Spooky.
But those women are like the nicest. Like they're like nice old ladies. And so they'd be in this full makeup. And there was this time where I was just like standing there with like French fries, but in my Stormtrooper outfit, like eating French fries, like watching. And she comes over to me. And I'm like, oh no! I'm like, there's this witch who's approaching me, and she's like, you know, what did she say? She said, it makes my little childhood heart so full that I'm looking at a Stormtrooper eating French fries. And I walks over, and I just couldn't stop laughing. I was like, that's the funniest thing. I'm like, okay, sure.
I'm never gonna be able to watch this show the same now.
I know.
Knowing about the French fries and the pita bread.
And I actually like sat down with the bread. I fell over on an apple crate. It was a whole thing, man. There's a lot of hijinks going on the Ahsoka set, but everyone was into it.
In a good way. Yeah.
In a good way.
From seeing all the behind the scenes stuff that the actors are posting, it seems like it was a blast. And it lines up right with what you're telling me here. You know, like Ray was playing the music and they were dancing to it on set. Like that's just, it seemed like a great time.
There was a lot of dancing and singing.
That's good.
Lars Mikkelsen in particular loved doing like a jig. He loved doing like he'd do like a hum jig with Thrawn because we were like his guys. And so at one point, also during that scene where we're all walking out, we did like sort of this like acapella thing where he was like humming and like doing like a thing, and we were like harmonizing with them, and it was like best
like
boss
West Side Story.
Yeah, it was like a little West Side Story Thrawn moment. And that like those memories are just so goofy and fun, and I don't know, like we were having a blast, and so that I don't know if you can hear that very loud helicopter, but that is I'm gonna go with that scene. The final answer. It's gonna be a scene with all the villains.
I asked for one or a few, and you gave me a few, and it's better to hear more about it than no. Those sound amazing. And once again, did you eat the pita bread and the cheese, or is that a
No,
spoiler?
I never ate
No?
it. I never ate the pita bread and the hummus and the cheese.
That's a shame.
It went somewhere else. But
How
yeah,
were
I
the
mean,
French
come on.
fries?
The French fries were delicious.
They
I
were
mean,
good.
I think there was one day where they would cater stuff sometimes, and one day they catered Chick-fil-A, and I
Okay.
personally love Chick-fil-A, and I ate so much chicken. You couldn't stop me. But yeah, to have that frame to be in a frame with all of the principal villains of the show, I'm like, come on, like
Oh yeah.
that's so cool. Like that's the best. And so that to me is like the number one. And to be like on top of this fortress and under the Chimera, I'm like, to be on the Chimera, like come
Yeah.
on, it's like the best.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
That's the best.
So before all this stuff happened with you being in Star
Yes.
Wars, like where did like if you could have been in Star Wars, you were always wishing maybe you could have been in Star Wars. Where did
Yeah.
being a stormtrooper kind of rank in there?
Like
obviously you'd take anything you could get, but like,
I'll be honest. I mean, being any kind of trooper is pretty close to the top. I've always been in love with the troopers. I have, all these action figures, much less action figures than before, but as you saw in the Instagram post, like there's this photo top down of above of me just like going through all of my old troopers. Like troopers is like the number one thing. I love that. But Stormtrooper would have probably been like number 3, like TIE pilot. That's my one. Like I would love to be a TIE pilot, like to be in a TIE fighter. And that was, I saw that being filmed. I saw the TIE pilot with the cool, the one that gets shot down or gets hit by the T6. Like I saw them doing that and I was like, I'm so jealous right now. Like I want to be in that so bad. Like I want to be in that thing. That is the number one. But I don't know. I love doing the masked characters because the other thing about being in a mask or being in makeup is that I can just be smiling ear to ear the whole time, and I don't have to keep it in. I don't have to act or pretend like I'm being serious. Like if I had my face out like Steel or Corey, I would never have been able to keep a straight face. Those Jabim refugees, I would have been like, you were McGregor. But
why is
in
that
the
guy
shot
smiling?
in the shot when Thrawn's coming by, every take under the helmet, I'm just like, oh man, every take, I am just freaking the heck out that like there's that guy. So like there's trooper in the mask stuff, anything covered like that is pretty far up there because I like being a part of it, but I also don't have to like put my face on it or like if I'm gonna put my face on it, like I would want like I would want to be like, it's that Glupshido guy, like Woo hair at the bar or whatever, like I'd be like him.
If you had a helmet like Zori Bliss, Carrie Russell,
Sure, yeah,
just your eyes,
my eyes, just
my
eyes, and I could go like this, and I wouldn't know.
There you go.
Yeah, but trooper, anything trooper related is pretty far up there. And the most infuriating thing that I heard the entire time I was there was someone came up to me and told me, "Oh, you would have been great for a clone trooper," and I was like, like they were shooting like, "Oh, you would have been great in that scene," and I was like, I was like, don't tell me that. I'm like, don't tell me that I could have been in the Clone Wars scene, man. Like, because to me, that would have been everything. Like, I think I would have actually died probably if I was in that shot with Ariana and Hayden. Like, I would have died. Because a lot of those guys were practical. Like, those were all, and the people who were around my height, and that was happening like sort of off in a different place. And when I was being told like, "Oh, you'd be great for that," I was like, like someone please take me now.
What could have been?
What could have been? Like, I know, but I don't know how many more Clone Wars flashbacks we're going to be doing because it seems like they've played that out. They've played that card and they've played it well.
Yeah, that arc is over with.
That arc is over with. So maybe in another life, but for now, that would have been number one. Anything Clone related, Republic, Clone Wars, yes. Please.
Clone Stormtrooper. And it's just a plus that you were like a variant Stormtrooper. You were a night trooper, so it's.
I know. I'm very excited. They're all like the action figures and Funko Pops, and there's gonna be. I'm like, it's just. Yep, I have an action figure now. Like that's awesome.
You'll have to autograph one for me.
I will. I absolutely will. that is something people always like ask me, like, oh, like what if it, X, Y, and Z, but all these hypotheticals. I'm like, no matter what, you're never gonna be able to take like it's done. It happened. I will always be able to sign a figure of that and be like, hey, it's me.
Yeah,
nothing that happens. No, can stop that.
You're part of the galaxy. So, final question, kind of to wrap up here, is when the show finally came out, I know the strike was still going on, so you couldn't really be
Yes.
public until the strike was over. Everyone got a fair deal, which was great.
Yeah.
Amazing
Right.
when that
Right,
happened.
yeah.
Very happy to hear that. But when it came out, like, what was it like for you personally to see yourself in the show? Like, you had the memories of being on set, but what was it like to actually see it?
It was. I mean, in 6, 7, and 8, when I knew that it was coming. Even still, I mean, obviously, I've watched the show a couple times now, a few times, and every time that I'm on screen, or I think that like I'm in this scene, my mind, like, I can't think about it. I'm like, oh, am I ruining it? I'm like, oh, is this? It sort of takes me out of it. But in terms of the episodes themselves, I was just so. It's like the ultimate bias, though. Like, I don't know if I can fairly appraise the show. For me, I was like, this is like the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, yeah.
Not obviously not ever. That's hyperbole. There are other things in Star Wars that I like more, but just Ahsoka the show I was liking so much already. Like the first 5 episodes, I particularly it really worked for me. Um, and so when we got to the Peridia and it felt like this grand, expansive Lord of the Rings thing, and then on top of that, I'm like, oh my god, like there's something I did. Uh, that was I was waiting with bated breath, and I couldn't have been more excited. I mean, you keep pulling up the photo, but you can see in all those photos I am just I was just freaking out. I couldn't I
That's
couldn't contain
genuine.
it. It was very genuine. I couldn't contain it, and the biggest thing was making sure which one was me, and that was a long, arduous process of being like that. That one was actually pretty easy because I knew where I was, and but the and you can honestly tell when it's tall. I can tell you right now, 100%. All of the people in frame in these frames are 100% me. But like that loading onto the drop ship, the gunship, that was really
Yeah.
fun. That was like the most fun. But seeing it stuff, seeing it scored, seeing it finished, seeing I don't know, it was unbelievable. Like, is there anything else like it? I mean, it was just the same. I think a lot of the same feelings that a lot of other super fans of Rebels and Clone Wars were going through watching the show. Was just, oh my god, this is amazing to see all this stuff come to life. And then with the additional little bit, like, oh my god, there I am. So honestly, now thinking about it, it is an interesting disconnect that I don't even know if I can articulate what it was like because
Well,
my
that's what I
fandom, my fandom is just so big, that I care so much about where the story is going and what like the future of the universe means and all this stuff and like how is this going to tie into what's happening in Mandalorian and that like that is what my mind was thinking about a lot. And so mixing it with the you're seeing something that you did it honestly, I don't even know how to. I don't
There's
even know
no
how to
words
parse.
for it.
There's no. I
Yeah.
don't even know how to parse through those feelings because the overwhelming like love of Star Wars and the lore of Star Wars is so strong for me that all of those feelings that everyone else was going through were also there. And on top of that, I think it just doesn't feel real. And that's the other thing is it's a hard to even comprehend that, especially when you're covered. That's the other that honestly to put a bow on it. That's also why I like doing it because I can sort of just fade away. It doesn't take me out of it. It doesn't take me out of it that oh that's me because I'm in a costume. I'm an action figure. I'm part of the set dressing. And it lets me just I can just fade away and be like, yep, those are a bunch of stormtroopers. That's what it is.
Yep.
But I
Agree.
don't know, obviously at the same time in the back of your mind. So it's complicated. No words. I'd say it's hard to articulate, as you can probably tell.
Yeah.
I can't. I
No,
can't.
it's
I
just
can't.
I just the vibe I'm getting is just total excitement,
Yeah.
genuine, like, and I wouldn't be able to explain it either. I don't think. Like, I've always wondered. You see pictures of the set that get shared in different projects, and you see the green screen, the blue screen, whatever, or the volume, and then like I always wonder what it's like for actors and extras and everyone there. Like, what is it like when you finally see this final project and you get to see what's on the blue screen or the green screen? It's just must be wild. It must be like so surreal.
Well, that's and honestly, okay, there you go. That's a better. I can answer that more specifically. Of yeah, specifically with Peridia, um, to see the fully realized Highlands, and because we were shown, or rather, it was there. You see in the behind the scenes stuff like the previs, the pre-rendered stuff of like the Chimera coming in, and just what the general vibe of. They were using the Scottish Highlands as reference, with the fog rolling over the hills.
Yeah.
And I was luckily actually able to talk to Doug Chang about it, who was there. I was asking him these questions, and so I had a pretty good idea in my mind, but to see, particularly, it is the hills realized, the hills with the fog rolling over low. When Balin and Shin are looking out onto the just into the the horizon, and they see just the vastness of Peridia. To visualize that was extremely cool, because you hear these things in your mind like, oh, it's going to be like Highlands with fog and smoke. Like, okay, sure. And then to see it on the screen, and to fill in all that blue screen is very, 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 very cool. In terms of the volume, though, that was pretty like 1-to-1. Like, I think they've got to a point now where you have an idea of what it's going to look like, and it's like, okay, like this is this is what it is. The most interesting thing is the way that shots, I don't know how much specifics I'm going to say about this, but the way that shots are stitched together, that certain volume shots and then shots on a stage are blended seamlessly to make one contiguous visual. And I don't know if I'll say too much more on that, but there's a lot of really interesting visual effects stuff that you wouldn't even think about that is visual effects, that you notice when you're there, and seeing it, it's really impressive. It's really impressive.
A lot of work goes into these things from a lot of different levels. But yeah, thank you, Levi, for joining me for this little interview that I wanted to do, because how often do you get to talk to someone that was in Star Wars, and it's cool to hear the experience and the stories. I think people will appreciate it. But where can people find you?
So many good stories. Well, All New Nerds is the YouTube channel. That's where primarily I share things. Levi James Bond is my name. Instagram. I know that is my name, guys. It's my legal name. Which that also, if you want to extend the interview, got a lot of play on set. They're like, your name is Levi Bond. I was like, yeah, that's my legal name. And they're like, did your parents do that on purpose? I'm like, well, yes, they did. And then that everyone knew, like, as James Bond.
There he goes.
But yeah, so Levi James Bond on Instagram, and then All New Nerds on everywhere else, I think, is the most important and relevant place that you could potentially follow me. And with that, we should be going back to work soon now that the strikes are over. And yeah, that should be really exciting. But thank you for having me on. I'm happy to talk about it as much as I can any day.
It was a blast, and it's been a while since I talked to you in general, so I've been really itching to talk with the All New Nerds, particularly you. I have to talk to Johnny and Gibbs and the guys another time. But yeah, this has been AJ on HoloNet Marauders, talking with Levi, Night Trooper number 3. I don't know.
I'll take 3. Yeah, I'll take 3.
No, Night Trooper 007. So Night Trooper number 7.
Number 7. That's good.
Levi James Bond. So I'll see you guys on the HoloNet. May the Force be with you.
Bye.